Welcome to Conversations on the Edge with Tom and TJ, where Generation X and Millennial talk about restoration, the Edge version 3, and the world.
All right. Hey, everybody. Tom McGUIRE here, and I am joined today with Jeremiah Kiefer, and very excited about our conversation today. We're going to talk a little bit about everything. And so if you don't know Jeremiah, he has a company called the Deft Group, and the Deft Resilience is if you live on the coast anywhere, pretty much resilience.
Maybe the United States.
The United States. All right. We'll keep it to the continent. You need to be talking with Jeremiah and understand what's happening. And so, Jeremiah, we always start out with some fun, exciting that's going on in our life. And so, what's happening?
Well, I'm concerned you might have got the wrong guy if you want fun and exciting. All I do is work, Tom. But no, exciting. Well, Labor Day is coming up. I'm looking forward to at least a day of hiding in a nice hotel room on a beach somewhere.
Nice.
And I don't know what to do other than immediately bring it back to work. It's we're gearing up for a very wet winter.
Yeah.
Expecting hurricane season to probably be light this year. But fun, I don't do a lot of fun, to be honest with you. Fun to me is sitting in my office on the weekend with enough free airspace to think through education right now. I mean, what we've been working on. It's a lot of lithium-ion battery safety and cleaning buildings with drones, and that's the fun stuff. During the week, we have to come out here and actually do our day jobs. But fun to me is being able to get a little more creative with how we can actually protect these buildings over time.
Yeah. Well, for my fun, we've been dealing a lot with cancer with Donna this summer. So for me, my fun is basically she's getting home early and she's doing good. And so that's been awesome. And the summer is basically gone. So now it's Labor Day, but we have to look forward to and just, like you, I do a lot of work, and everything in my life is somewhat work related.
Sure.
I try to, have fun and tie it all in there, and when I'm not working, I try to relax. And so we're here in the man cave today, and gotta see if we can get my.
You did get the juices flowing there a little bit. I don't share this with many people in the business world, but the one thing that my wife and I do outside of the business world is we're NBA people.
Okay.
So we went out to Vegas 2 or 3 weeks back and watched the summer league, and now we're counting down for tip off in late October.
Yeah.
We had to change a trip the other day because they actually released the schedule, figuring out what game we're going to go to start the season.
Yeah, they were waiting for LeBron.
That's it. Yeah. The whole world had to stop and wait on LeBron to figure out where he was going.
Well, he's the king, and so
The son.
Yeah.
My wife thinks, though. I have different opinions. But.
Well, and think about his career, though. It is, it seemed like yesterday when he was like 19 coming in, and now it's been 20 plus years, and it just goes by like that. It's unbelievable.
Well, you and I were talking a little bit about health, before we started recording here, and if anything, he is an example of what taking care of yourself can do as far as longevity in sports. That is absolutely incredible what he's.
I mean, he's playing as well as anybody in the game.
Yeah.
And I mean, and talk about a physical game. We were at lunch talking about hips and knees and, all of this stuff. And, from riding bike and running and skiing and think about, all that time on the hard court, and he is still competing.
The only difference is now he can do it for 12-minute bursts instead of 48 minutes at a time.
Well, and he also spends, a couple $1 million a year on his body. And so,
Yeah. That's real though. I don't know if you've read some of those stories, but the guy sleeps 12 hours a day. He has 3 full sleep cycles. I've never read into it enough, but
no, it's amazing.
yeah, it really is.
In the end result is, I mean, it'll be interesting this season too, because to see what actually happens with the 76ers, which was a surprise.
Yeah,
that he went there, but if he actually pulls off, another,
it would be amazing.
yeah,
Yeah,
because that'd be what, is that 3 teams?
it'd be number 5 if they wanted. Well,
14,
the 14,
14, that's unbelievable.
but it'd be his 5th championship, and I think
Yep.
that ultimately he cares about legacy. And until he gets 6, then Jordan's still the best ever, right?
Well, I think he wants to. I don't know if he'll ever catch Jordan, but I think he's trying to do it with more teams in more places.
Which personally I don't like, and that's been my problem with LeBron, is that I like a one-team athlete.
Yeah.
I think that that's what gets the fans behind.
Yeah.
It's honestly what turned us off the NBA for 5 years, is when all the drama of him going to Miami the first time.
Yeah, taking my skills.
Steve is entertaining sometimes, but it got a little extreme, and I don't think I've ever really forgiven him for that. I even like Miami, but
well, we live in that era where the athlete is. I mean, man. I grew up in the '70s, and if you look at like Roger Starbuck and any of the quarterbacks from back then, any of the stars back in the '70s, late '70s. They're making 250,000 a year.
yeah.
And there's guys that are making 250,000 a quarter.
They've gotten a lot better at monetizing the marketing side of the game in the last 20, 30 years.
Well, and what's happened too is gambling. Gambling has taken sports now to where, just a few short years ago, the Cowboys were the most valuable in the world at $2 billion. Now
the Lakers sold for 12.5 last week. Yeah.
And so who knows what they're worth now? And it's all gambling.
Yeah.
It's the gambling dollars that have come in. And so,
which is a whole separate discussion. But.
Yeah. A whole another set of issues that we're setting ourselves up for. So tell us about Deft, for those who are not familiar with Deft and the resilience. Tell us about what that's all about.
Yeah, I'll give a brief backstory on how we got to where we are now, because it's hard to give an elevator pitch for. So I'm a career adjuster. I was an independent adjuster for 18 years before we started moving into our current vintage of Deft. Deft's about 10 years old, and what the original product market fit was, we had, I don't want to name too many names, but we were working with some of the private client insurers where, homes range from, at that point, $1 million to 20 million.
Mm-hmm.
And the claims are complicated, much more complicated than a middle market home. And these insurance carriers realize that you can't just send a big box TPA out there and fulfill the promise that the agents that wrote those policies made to their client, in turn our policyholder, in that, it's white glove concierge service. So we built a company that billed like attorneys, weren't the cheapest, but our carrier clients knew that if they needed that white glove service, we were here to support them. And we did that. It was actually Hurricane Ida hitting New Orleans. It was the last straw, though, before we started pivoting. Carriers got too accustomed to hiring friendly engineers to come in and rubber stamp everything as pre-existing damage, if I'm going to be quite blunt about it. And they tended to forget that I'm the adjuster. It's my license. My name is attached to this file. So when you come back and take that engineer's opinion that this is all pre-existing and ask me to write my estimate based off of that scope, I'm the one that's going to sit in depositions and examinations under oath for the next 3 or 4 years. And that's really not how I choose to spend my life. I was also in a point where, I have zero dilution. We were able to pivot, where a lot of bigger companies don't have that option. So I spoke a lot even at that point, and I started calling the insurance companies out a little bit. And look, we've got to promise these policyholders something more than the potential for a fight 3 or 4 years, into that relationship when they eventually do have a claim. And what that turned into was risk management as a component of the policy, meaning that, we may go out and kick the tires and find out if the building has the attributes, conditions, but almost as importantly, the human element behind it, that we want to enter this relationship. And then if we do bind a policy with you, we're going to offer that next layer of risk management support that really doesn't exist. Agents, they offer some. Property management companies offer some, but none of them are, I don't want to say we're building science experts, but imagine how many losses we've seen over our combined history. Pretty much tell you what's going to break and, how you need to mitigate that downside before the wind ever blows. So now we're in a situation where we work with hundreds and hundreds of associations and luxury home owners throughout Florida and Texas, and literally dedicate our time year round to being there for them. I mean, a lot of what I do is go offer, hurricane preparedness courses to the owners of these associations. Hey, your windows may leak during the storm. It doesn't mean they're broken. It means that they're being windows, and just kind of giving them the education that they need to best prepare, but then most efficiently recover after the wind blows.
Because it's more than just, pulling down a shutter. There's things that you can do to your building, to make sure that when there is a storm coming, that you can mitigate, the water damage. We know where it's coming in. It's wind driven. It's coming in through the windows. It's coming in through the, usually through the sliders, and there's things that you can do that will minimize the damage.
I would go as far as to say you can mitigate 80, probably even 90% of the damage without spending a whole lot of money. We're going over to one of these condo buildings across the street, high rise, go up to the roof, and the first things that are going to come off are going to be, the vent, the lid over that power vent. The air condenser is going to, condensing unit is going to fall off the platform and tear a hole in the TPO roof, and then there goes the roof. It's going to be the, metal cover over the elevator shafts. So we start as simple as, going to the maintenance guy and saying, next time you go down to Home Depot there, get you a box of 1/2-inch stainless steel washers, back all these drywall screws out of these vents, put a better system or put a better fastener in there. And just simply by doing that, they probably cut their wind exposure by 50, 60%. It's the simple things.
And they're the things that they're not thinking about on a daily basis. And so that's where, the experience of going through all of this.
When you see it break enough times, Tom, you're going to have a pretty good idea how to keep it from breaking.
Yeah. And that's, and if you look at, just the HOA communities here in Florida, and we're right, the coast is right, the ocean's right across the street. For years, it was the guys, and you were keeping costs down. So it was just, you weren't really maintaining the buildings. You were just kind of, getting by so it didn't break the bank for everybody. And most of these buildings, built in the 70s and 80s, like our townhouse here is, I think, is built in 75 or something, and the condos across the street, same thing. And so for all that time, we were managing the HOA cost,
Sure.
to keep it down for retirees and snowbirds, and and then all of a sudden, the condo collapsed, and that changed everything. So now everybody has to, look at things, proactively, because we're a reactive society.
Too much.
We don't make a change until we have to, and so, and that's kind of, where we're at now. And now all the HOAs have to. And so I know here in Satellite Beach and Cocoa Beach, the average HOA now is, $1,000 to $1,200
As far as dues.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A month. And that went up from, what, 10 years with 400 or 500. And so that changes a lot of things for our area, because now all of a sudden, that it's not an area. We're past the time where, a school teacher in Chicago retires.
Oh, way past.
And comes to Florida and buys a condo. And so it's interesting to see where we're going to be, coastal, here in Florida.
Look, we hope that another Champlain Towers event never happens again, but that's how risk management works. And that something terrible has to happen. And then we reverse engineer the incident and start putting rules and regulations in place to keep it from happening again. Which the state of Florida did. It was an overswing. It's going to take them, a decade or two to find a system where we can formally require that these buildings keep up with their deferred maintenance and that they have prudent financial, planning. Those things should be necessary.
Yeah.
It's kind of amazing that they weren't previously. But some of the funding mechanisms, I was reading an article the other day that somewhere between 25 and 30% of associations in Florida still are not compliant with milestone and Sears requirements. And like any walk of life, it's one thing putting a law or a statute in place. It's a whole different thing having the enforcement mechanisms in order to actually make sure that it happens. So we're seeing a gulf between the intention of the rules and the actual execution of the rules on the back end. Some of the highest end associations in Florida are the worst funded if you're going to pick up their reserve study and actually look into it. And this is the problem that, in my humble opinion, exists right now. Is if I'm a rich family living in a condo in Palm Beach, I don't have a problem scratching a check for that special assessment when somebody comes around with the hat.
Yeah.
I didn't get into that condo not knowing how to manage my money.
Yeah.
So, okay, association, you're asking me to pull money for mechanisms that yield me 30, 40% a year.
Yeah.
And go bury it in a coffee can in the backyard to complete a paint project that's not going to happen for 9 years from now. There's a problem with that. So as soon as they can balance the funding mechanism with the intended good of actually having, this type of discipline, then they'll be cooking with hot grease, but they got a ways to go.
Well, and because there's still a lot of that, the good old boys, like still trying to manage, trying to keep, everybody that's been in that condo building, trying to keep everybody there and happy, so it's, I think there'll always be that, some type of skirting around things but, like you said, on the high end stuff, people, they're not worried about, but there were some people, here in Cocoa Beach. I was talking with my CPA and she was like, yeah, I've got, one of my clients, it's a $200,000 assessment. It was like, that's a big deal.
Especially when you go back to that, family that moved here off of a teacher's pension from Detroit 30 years ago, when you could come down here and buy a condo for 7,500, 25,000.
Yeah.
I want to layer on some other examples. So I brought up Fort Myers Beach, and I want to finish that in some communities are set up for failure.
Yeah.
We've seen it play out firsthand. I don't know if you've seen that Fort Myers Beach banned flood prevention devices for all residential structures. Now, I don't think that the attorneys are done fighting.
Put out there.
Correct. They can't put up flood doors or floodgates or flood panels or even well, I guess they could probably do non-structural systems. And I think the attorneys still have some fighting to do as to whether residential means condominiums or not. We're actually kind of sifting through that right now.
What's the reasoning on that?
Well, see, that's where it got interesting. So the day that mandate dropped, I sent an email out to about 40 different people, between politicians, agents, insurers, emergency management officials, trying to find out that very question. Like, okay, what's really going on here? From our firsthand experience, we insure and manage risk for, I think today, 13 different associations around Fort Myers Beach. So we've seen it.
Yeah.
We were also there after Ian. We saw a lot of those flood systems fail.
Yeah.
Most of those flood prevention devices were very subpar.
Yeah.
Order some off of Amazon, have the maintenance guys go strap it to the wall with no thought of.
And it's progressed. So, I mean, there's some really good products out there now.
But it takes engineering.
Yeah.
It's not about the product.
Yeah. What
happens is flood occurs. It brings everything front and center to the people that live there.
Yeah.
And then they start having board meetings, or if it's a single family home, around the dinner table saying, hey, we got to do something to protect ourselves in the future. Well, then somebody comes and knocks on your door with a flood device that they sell as the best thing since sliced bread. You take them up on it. You strap it on the side of your building. Well, everybody underappreciates the threat of storm surge.
Yeah.
We don't talk about wind in this state. Since you and I have been in this business, it's all been about wind, right? Wind.
Yeah.
Well, the weight of water is magnitudes more of a threat than wind.
Especially like on the West Coast.
Absolutely. Yeah. Or we were talking earlier where you've got that extended continental shelf that allows that water to pile up and come at you.
Yeah. And Gulf.
Statistic, we've had 4 storm surge events in the Gulf over 17 and a half feet back to Katrina. Katrina would have been the first. Katrina hit approximately 21 feet in Mississippi.
Mississippi, yeah.
Michael hit right at 21 feet. But then even more recently, Ian topped out about 15 and a half. And just 2 years ago, Helene hit almost 18 up there around Steenhatchee. And so when you're in a beachfront condo and you're thinking about what that actually means to this building, but to the flood devices, everybody underestimates the threat of hydrostatic pressure displacement.
Yeah.
So we go in and we're saying, okay, you have a problem here in the fact that your fire pump room and your major electrical are sitting 6 foot above sea level, but it's not as simple as just going and strapping flood panels in front of that door and saying you're protected. CMU block only holds back water for 30, 45 minutes in most cases, if it's not lined. Not to mention the fact that a lot of those slabs and lower levels are built with frangible, systems. They're intended to break away.
Yeah.
So if I come strap panels, I'm doing unintended structural damage to my building. If I get a storm surge event, it's anything over 2 or 3 feet.
It's stressing it out. And that's part of their
thinking.
Of the
reason.
Yeah.
Now, the cynical reason and the consensus on what's actually happening is, about the 50% repetitive flood rule with FEMA.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning over a 10-year period, if you sustain more than 50% of the replacement cost of your building, then you have to rebuild to current code.
Yeah.
Well, those buildings can't afford that. I mean, if you were going to rebuild one of those 1970s, 80s Fort Myers Beach towers to code, we're talking 10, 15 million dollars. So they're setting up for failure. They want them to flood for a third time to push them past that 50% threshold because the developers are funding things behind the scene and they want to put a new Ritz-Carlton there.
Well, that's,
I wish I was like exaggerating, but I'm really not.
Well, the cynical view, though, is actually you're being real. It's more realist. And so when you're talking about that property, from a developer, who's got unlimited funds, you'll come into that small beach town and look at it and say, what is all this junk here? This could be, so much, so for the people that have lived there all their life and it's a small beach town and they love it and everything, the developers looking at it, just like you're saying,
a business opportunity,
Ritz-Carlton, or, get this stuff out of here and let's rebuild and make money, because this property should be much more valuable.
But there's my struggle from my day-to-day job as a risk consultant, where I literally go to these buildings. I understand the physical element. I've reviewed their financials, and now I'm sitting in front of humans trying to have a discussion about what their next 5-10 year roadmap actually looks like. Okay, so take that same 1975 structure. We're in a soft insurance market right now, and we'll come back to that. Yeah. The building really doesn't have to do much over the next 2 or 3 years when it comes to getting, I say, a competitive insurance premium in the state. Yeah. It's a lot of capacity. What they're doing is preparing for when we start moving back into that hard market. Well, the 1A and 1B from an insurer's perspective when it comes to a building, a beachfront building, is quality of roof and then full opening protection. And the second one is what people underestimate. You're talking millions of dollars if you're going to upgrade the windows and the sliding glass doors to meet current code in one of these towers, not to include a full waterproofing project that has to immediately follow it. But I'm sitting there looking at one of these buildings. I know they're set up for failure when it comes to the repetitive flood situation.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether to tell them, look, if you want your building to remain standing 10 years from now, you're going to have to spend $5 to $8 million upgrading your windows and doors and doing full waterproofing, even if your roof is in pristine condition. And that's before we even started addressing your flood threat down here.
Yeah.
What would you do? I mean, if you're a financially savvy owner within that building, do you not at that point bring into the equation, okay, well, what will Blackstone come pay me for my unit? And just lean into the whole process and say, I'm just going to cash out here for 3x what my place is worth and go move to the new building,
it's already done,
blocks inland So it's tricky.
Yeah, it's sad in a way, because I'm like an old Florida guy, and I've been here 32 years, but I appreciate like the old, and I'm here in Satellite Beach, and it's laid back, and you're over in Tampa, St. Pete, and more busy. You get more people. It's grown exponentially over the last 20 years. It's unbelievable. And beautiful area. And over here, this is laid back. And we were talking at lunch, about the difference. And so I kind of hate losing, that gator farm or the roadside, freak show or whatever, because that's Florida, in a nutshell. And so we're kind of, it's, prices have changed. It's so much different here now. It's very expensive, and so, insurance and I think we pay the most insurance. I think we're behind California and New York.
Well, actually, no, maybe New York, but 2 years ago, the average homeowner's insurance policy in Florida was a quarter of what it is in California. And that's a whole different set of challenges because California's been subsidizing their insurance, and they've done some silly things up there.
Yeah.
They haven't allowed insurers to price in the cost of reinsurance, which in most cases is 50% of the premium. And they also didn't allow them to use future-facing cat models, which just led to a hugely underpriced premium in that state. But in Florida, back to your overarching point of old Florida versus new Florida, my prediction, and that and 50 cents will get you a Coke, but here you go. Pretty much have to separate it at I-4. I think North Florida will retain some of that old Florida feel if we look at 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
Don't quite know how to categorize Space Coast because I-4 doesn't come all the way over here. So we'll curve it down for your sake to Vero Beach. South Florida is going to be a playground for the ultra wealthy.
Yeah.
And I think that tide is already
there.
Shifted.
Yeah.
And back to Fort Myers Beach. Now this is just a matter of, is it 5 years or is it 15?
Yeah.
And I think that's largely going to be dependent on what the insurance markets do, but even more so, when does that next Cat 4 or Cat 5 come?
Yeah.
Because you get another Cat 4 blowing into Southwest Florida, and it's going to happen real quick.
Yeah.
We're already seeing that happen.
Yeah.
Just for me and Irma.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think this might be the last
Could be.
in between.
Some of the panhandle.
The last little, and then, in the panhandle.
We know 30A is booming.
Yeah.
But I just drove from Orange Beach to Mexico Beach a few weeks ago. There aren't many cranes outside of 30A. Yeah. I think there was one going up out there on the west end of Perdido.
Yeah.
I don't think I saw a single crane in the entire Panama City area. So there's not a whole lot of development going on there right now. Well,
there's still a little hangover, in the panhandle because they do typically get hit by the hardest storms.
Well, they also have an insurability issue because a lot of that mid 2000s when we had that last boom.
Yeah.
A lot of it was just built substandard.
Yeah.
You still do have a lot of stick frame on the beach.
Plus sticks, which is amazing.
And the insurers don't like it.
Yeah.
So if you can't get a project insured up there, you're going to have a problem with new development.
Yeah. It's.
I wanted to go back and make one more point before we leave the financial planning for these communities. It's been kind of shocking. We started moving into the Texas markets January 1st of this year. And while everything seems like it's crazy and playing catch up in Florida, Florida's insurance markets are by far the most mature in the country when it comes to property. We see in Texas, in some of the richest neighborhoods, even talking $150,000, $200,000 or $200 million buildings. Reserve study? We don't even know what that is. Or, we got one of those in 2016, and they're still basing their budget on their future projects off of a 10-year-old reserve study. And it's kind of like, well, how much did a gallon of milk cost you in 2017? Yeah. And now let's extrapolate that through your entire budget. Yeah. So, yes, Florida seems chaotic, but we are far ahead when it comes to insurance regulation. Yeah. All the way down to actually how we maintain our buildings.
Well, even, the building codes and everything. I mean, Andrew kind of set the tone.
Andrew was a huge milestone when it comes to
Florida. Yeah. And that was, because if you look at the newer buildings that are on the coast, the damage is much less. Mm-hmm. It's wind driven. And if you're in the southern part of the state, It's, you have rising water. Miami, that's a serious issue down there.
Oh, we're leaving flood mitigation up for months at a time during king tide season.
Yeah. Yeah. And they keep building.
And they'll continue to build, though. And that's an important point that we have to remind ourselves. If we back out of our Florida existence and even our US existence, one of the safest places to park money, if you were in a oligarch run country, we'll take Brazil, Russia. Those were the two where you've been to Miami.
Yeah.
It's more Brazilian and Russian than it is American. That's where they want to park their money.
Yeah.
Because while we have some volatility in our insurance markets and real estate markets, if you need that $1 million to still be there in 10 years, just go buy you a condo. And there's a good chance that you're going to see a little appreciation off of it. So,
well, and especially if you look at, the last 10 years, 15 years in Miami, I mean, it was expensive.
Oh, yeah.
And now
it's rivaling New York.
Now it's like, it's like, wow. You didn't think it would go any higher. And then if you went back into the 80s in Miami was, was cheap.
Yeah.
Compared to
especially the Northeast cities or the West Coast. I would agree with you. But Miami's right there with San Francisco and New York these days.
Yeah.
And you and I live and work in these markets. We get used to it. I told you at lunch, I went up and saw my family in the Ozarks a couple of weeks ago and take everybody out to dinner for the cost of what it would cost me to go out to dinner in Miami. It's pretty amazing how expensive it actually is down here.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, but you know what? It's like, even though it keeps going up, there is somebody that is ready to step in. There's somebody wealthier, so it's not like it ever gets priced out.
Well, you had your time in Nevada, so I'll put it in these terms. My wife and I go out to Vegas every 6 months or so. And, I don't know if you've been to the Strip in the last 3 years, but the prices are insane. So that is the one place that's more expensive than Miami if you go to the Strip in Vegas. But I tell my wife that, look, it's such a global attraction. They can charge whatever the hell they want to charge because there are enough rich people that will continue to come here in order to charge those prices.
It's actually cheaper to go to Paris than it is to go to Paris in Las Vegas.
It's a good way to put it. I'm going to have to reuse that one.
I was at the MGM and 2 years ago, and we'll be back out there in a couple of weeks. And went down. I was hungry, and I was like, I just looking for something. And there was one slice of pizza, and didn't even get it. It was just a bottle of water. Didn't get any.
$22.
It was $35, and it wasn't even that good. and I watched. All right, so I picked it out over here, and it went through this little
conveyor,
air fryer or whatever.
Oh, okay.
Came out the other end, and it had more pepperoni. I don't know what happened. It wasn't the same piece. And I was like, where's the meat? She's like, right there. I was like, there was like 3 pepperonis on there.
Well, pepperoni's at $5 a pop. Did you want a $45 piece of pizza?
I was like, oh my God.
But that brings us back to Florida.
Yeah.
And that's why I use the example of, we're almost going to have to divide the state between north and south, because that south part of Florida is the equivalent of the strip in Vegas.
Yeah.
They can build whatever monstrosities that they want on this coast. And there is enough wealth around the world that will flock here for a variety of different reasons, past the sun and the beaches and everything else that we love about Florida. Yeah. It's a fairly stable environment.
And that's just Miami. Then you go over, on the other side.
The West Coast is the same way. From Tampa all the way south, it is booming.
Yeah.
Lots and lots of money.
Yeah.
Okay. When we're out here consulting, for these properties, I know your background's in restoration. I know that you work with a lot of restoration contractors. It is the single most important thing for these properties, whether it's a new built monstrosity or it's a 1970, we have some concerns. The first question we ask is your emergency services contract.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I don't even want to start to have a discussion about your deferred maintenance and your finances until we know who's going to show up tomorrow morning if the pipe breaks on the 18th.
Yeah.
And it's vital for these buildings to have these partnerships, whether they plan on being around for 8 or 10 years or whether they're planning on being around for the next 50.
Yeah. And again, it's just all part, it's like when we were at lunch, our server, what are you guys having a podcast about? It's like, well, we do restoration and insurance and it's, to a lot of the community, they don't know what restoration is, what a restoration contractor is. It's
a challenging term, Tom. I was having a meeting with one of the big paint manufacturers here in Florida the other day, and he kept talking about his restoration partners. Restoration partners. He actually meant to us concrete restoration.
Yeah.
But he just referred to it. So restoration, you almost have to dissect it even beyond that.
Yeah.
And what are we talking about?
Yeah. My family to this day still doesn't know what I do. and this is my 40th year in this industry, and they still don't quite get it. Every time I introduce myself, I have to tell them, I have to have like this PowerPoint, getting into PowerPoint out, World Trade, all this stuff, and boom, and Katrina, and then all of a sudden they get it, but they still don't get it.
And I might trade you there trying to explain what I do in that, well, we're insurers, but we handle claims, but we do risk management, but we also have these events where we educate, and I don't even know what to tell people that we do anymore.
Yeah, it's same for me, because we get the training and get consulting and we get software and all this stuff. So it was just like, so yeah. I still have to bring a mini PowerPoint with me. And
I brought this up to you at lunch, but I think it's probably my North Star at this point. We know the insurance markets. We've been in these insurance markets for a long time. We had a discussion about the fact that we are in a soft market. We've also seen some changes at a statutory level in Tallahassee, largely the result of the Champlain Towers, that made Florida a lot more favorable to an insurance company, which has led to a lot of capacity, which is what's created the soft market. And you can edit this out if I'm overstepping, but the state of Florida is hanging its hat on citizens' policy count continuing to drop.
Yeah.
It's kind of the byproduct of all of their efforts. But in actuality, what's happened is coverage has been decreased significantly between high deductibles and exclusions, limitations that are now in these policies. So, you have a homeowner in Cocoa Beach that, for whatever reason, they had a 23-year-old roof. They had a prior claim that threw up a red flag. They hired a public adjuster at one point in time. They got kicked to the citizens market as the insurer of last resort, where citizens policy count went through the roof. It was sitting well over 1 million 3 years ago. Not to mention all the litigation.
Where are they about now?
So now they're down 300,000 here. But that's what they hang their hat on, and they want to brag that the success of all the statutory changes that we've made is allowing us to move policies back into the private sector. But in actuality, that same homeowner in Cocoa Beach is now paying 2-3x for a third of the coverage.
Yeah.
I don't want to go as far as saying it was an intentional fleecing of the middle and lower classes, but for every one of those policies that's gone through that cycle, you now have a homeowner that is struggling to put gas in their gas tank that is almost self-insured at this point. It's turned into an emergency policy, right? I mean, yes, if your house burns down, it's going to be a good thing you have an insurance policy. If you have a water loss, if you have a Cat 2 hurricane blow in here, you're going to be paying for 100% of these repairs anyway.
Yeah. And so we were talking about that too. It's like, all right, so if I'm that homeowner, I might be going down to Lowe's and, chat GPT and, water damage
right.
And I might be doing a lot of that with myself, with my handyman or, or something, and just to mitigate my loss.
I'll tell you what I did after Milton. We were in our high rise there in Tampa and did change my mind a lot about window damage prior to and after a Cat 2. But anyway, we had 2 inches of water throughout our unit. I mean, we have floor to ceiling windows and the water just simply blew through to the point where 2 inches throughout the entire place. We could have made a big deal about it. Could have went and hired filed insurance claims and gotten counsel involved in all kinds of things. Instead, what did we do? We dried it out.
Yeah.
We went and got some fans and dried it out, and we're very comfortable being back in our house 3 or 4 days later and went on about our business.
Well, I mean, that's the thing is reaction, getting it done, getting moving.
Yeah.
And
we had fans going within 2 or 3 hours.
Yeah.
Like it was immediate. So.
Well, that's when I see something coming, my garage, I'm like ready. I know where where the weak points are, and I'm all right. So I'm watching. I get stuff by the windows. We're catching water, and before the storm even gets there. And so it's the way we look at losses and the way that the average homeowner does is totally different.
But I agree with you. As a single family homeowner, especially when the market starts to harden back up, and it will, these are 3 to 7 year cycles. We've been through enough of them that it'll get hard within the next 2 to 4 years. I don't know whether it'll be the storms affect the market, but it's not the driver of the market either. It's mostly reinsurance. It could be a geopolitical event. It could be a hurricane. It could be a combination thereof. It would probably have to be multiple hurricanes unless it was a big 4 or a 5 that ran into Miami or Tampa. But they will hard. So as a single family homeowner, I would put a beast of a metal roof on, put some new windows in the place, have a backup generator, and probably go buy a simple DP3 fire policy or a DP1 and call it good. The one thing that I do constantly remind people when they're saying we're just going to go naked as far as insurance coverage, make sure you have that liability. Liability for a homeowner is not that expensive because that's where you'll end up getting burned. It's not that property damage. It's somebody slips and falls or your dog bites somebody or now you're out 2 or 3 million once that goes through litigation. So
you thought you were going to be all right because you were going to cover the storm yourself, but you didn't think about somebody suing you.
And as a reminder to everybody, big part of why you purchase insurance is for liability coverage. I mean, it's very, very important. So now I want to, if you'll allow me, I'd like to kind of go into where our focus is in resilience.
Yeah. So tell us more about what's happening and about your the tour. What people where they can find out more. Tell us a little bit more.
Yeah. We just got so disgusted with fighting over insurance claims. Going back to Andrew again, over the last 30, 40 years, insurance has pretty much been, or the claims process has been weaponized in the state. It's not that it doesn't happen in other places, but like all of insurance is kind of where we figure it out and then it translates to other places. Ground zero. And I just totally disagree with the process. The carriers do it. We have an entire cottage industry of policyholder advocates that are on the other side of this. Property owners are stuck in the middle where hell, I'm not sure I wouldn't go hire a public adjuster if I had an insurance loss of significance. A, because I just don't want to deal with the headache, and B, unless I know who my insurance company is, I don't trust them.
Yeah.
I think that the day is coming. I don't know whether it's 2 years, 5 years, or 10 years, where the discussion becomes more about resiliency and less about how do I win the claims process.
Yeah.
For a lot of the reasons we already discussed, right? Deductibles are higher, coverage is more limited. There's not as much fat on the bone to go around to everybody to pay indemnity plus. And I won't get into a 501 insurance lecture here, but that's the philosophy that we take when we go into these buildings. Is this isn't an insurance company or an insurance conversation, excuse me. It's we need to minimize the insurance aspect as part of the discussion. Just consider that risk transfer element part of overall net spend. This is just part of your financial reality that you live in.
Yep.
So when we take a building, it could be a single family home. It could be a 35-story brand new $250 million, condo tower.
Yeah.
The first thing that we've got to do is put an emergency services contractor relationship in place and then maintenance programs in place, right? You take a reserve study back to the association world, that's a sunk cost. Okay, if we're looking at over a 30-year horizon, if it's on this report, you're going to spend this money. This is just simply you keeping up with your building.
Yeah.
But maintenance gets...
and it's not going to get cheaper.
It's going to get far more expensive. In fact, you all don't know this. Anything over $250,000 in your reserve study, go get a hard bid. I don't know how many reserve studies I see where they're going to paint it that same 35-story building for $350,000. You couldn't have done it for that in 1970.
Yeah.
I don't know where these numbers come from.
No.
Which means that you're going to still be passing the hat around for special assessments when it's time to do that project. But bottom line, if you don't consider the maintenance component, and this is not a lot. This is $10,000 a year to roof, $10,000 a year to, and I'm talking in the association world. This would be the equivalent of $1,000 a year as a homeowner.
Yeah.
All that interim maintenance in between those large projects keeps you to that sunk cost that's in that reserve study. If we just consider that it's correct with those dollar amounts. Yeah. If we don't keep up with the waterproofing on our balcony, if we don't go up and, repair our roof once a year, this is cost plus, right? So now we're getting into, okay, I have to paint my building every 7 to 10 years, being in a beachfront environment for X amount of money, whatever that cost is. But now if I have to come in and do concrete restoration, we just tripled the price. Whereas if I would have been doing annual inspections and maintenance, I could have put some sealant around that post pocket and probably saved myself an additional $50,000 worth of concrete restoration for that one spot. So it's partner alignment, and the partner alignment overlaps the maintenance, inspections, and minor repairs that you need to be making throughout the lifespan. The third component is catching up any deferred maintenance. Right? Like every other aspect of our lives. We can't do anything about anything that happened a second before right now.
Yeah.
But here's what we got. So if we're going to try our damnedest to keep our building relevant for the long run, keep it viable in these coastal markets, then we have to catch up our deferred maintenance.
Yeah.
And that can be expensive. Well, let's assume that we do all these things. This is where I get real interested, and where my passion is how do we make the building more resilient?
Yeah.
Okay. We just got it back to a level set moment. And now what technology exists out here that we can actually further reduce risk and in turn further reduce that net spend over time?
Well, the key is getting everybody to do that maintenance, and that's one thing is the growth of Florida has happened, since the 80s, its biggest growth. And so there's a lot of buildings were built in the 70s and 80s and 90s that they didn't do that on. They weren't sealing around that crack. And, we have a little condo down here on the beach and And if you're not, you have to seal the building almost yearly.
Yeah.
Because it got to a point where
people underappreciate how brutal these coastal conditions are.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
And you put it off, and then put it off to a point, and then you even, repair the front, put on new balconies, do all that stuff that, it's happened almost all the way from Miami all the way to Jacksonville, after Irma. And if you're not following up, because then you think, oh, no, we fixed that. And we put on new balconies. Well, no, you still have to be doing the maintenance on the new balconies because the next door might do the same exact thing.
Yeah, waterproofing is vital. It's not a once every 7 to 10 years. It's constant. At least every year.
Yeah.
And it's like everything. I mean, I always compare it to health, right?
Yeah.
You do the basic things. You check up every once in a while. You go to the gym a couple times a week, probably more than that. Then you're going to be in a better position than the person next to you that's not doing so. And the exact same thing translates to the buildings.
Because age, we were talking about that at lunch. You get 40, you get one set of things that show up at 40 and 50, another show. And then once you hit 60, you have shoulders, knees, hips.
Well, and it may be surprising to some of the people that'll listen to this, in that the U.S. typically builds buildings to last 50 years.
Yeah.
It's not ancient Rome, it's not ancient Greece, and it's very intentional. So any of these coastal properties were built prior to 1975, they're on borrowed time. Which even compounds the need to keep up with maintenance, keep up with the life cycles of these materials.
I know most of the buildings around here in Brevard County on the coast, we have a few new buildings. There's not a lot. We don't have, overwhelming, we have moratoriums on how high you can go.
Sure.
And all of that, which is good because it keeps the population down.
Good for you. I'd like bigger buildings.
Good for the laid back surfer community, but it does, all those buildings, they're still catching up on the maintenance, and even you just can't catch up.
They either will or they won't. And if we go back to Fort Myers, if they don't catch up, then they're going to be replaced. Yeah. And that's the reality. Yeah. And I'm pretty direct when we deal with these property owners. And look, I'm not here to be your friend. I hope you like me some, but I'm going to tell you the hard truth. And in a position where I understand the insurance markets enough to speak that, I understand the building science enough to speak to it. You got pretty much two choices. You can go one fork in the road now, or you can go the other fork in the road now, and that's going to determine the viability for the next 5-10 years you're building.
Well, and you have to, somebody has to guide them. And so tell us about the tour, the Resilience Tour, and what's the next stops, what's happening. And
so we've started educating, right? When we built this program in collaboration with our, carrier partner, where we layered on risk management to insurability, I was missing a piece in my hypothesis of how do we, bring all this inside of a walled garden to where we can actually help a property from, binding an insurance policy all the way through recovering from a hurricane. And the part that I underappreciated, kind of foolishly so, is the importance of the contractors and the engineers, right? I needed trusted partners. So we ended up standing up Deft Resilience to be a platform for, the experts and the contractors that we would call in based off of a lot of experience. Like in any business, we've got good contractors, we've got bad contractors. And fortunately, we've worked with enough of them that we have a pretty good idea who's who.
Yeah.
So we called up, the people that we would refer and said, let's try something a little different here. Let's combine the education that, we individually and we collectively are giving to our respective markets, let's bring it together under one roof. So since then, we started hosting our summits about a little over a year ago now, to where we'll identify, a specific topic, and we're in a unique position to do so because we can aggregate the experiences of hundreds of associations, hundreds of homes, really figure out what their pressure points are. Like, what do you really need to know that you don't know at mass? Put together the education, put the experts in our network on stage,
connect everybody,
and truly deliver the right message, and also put our expert and contractor partners in the room. So as we're educating the folks in the audience, make it very clear to them that if you want to hear more about what we just explained to you, here's the people we trust.
Yeah.
And that comes with some value when it's, we wear as many hats as we do. And that we're really trying to help you. And instead of you getting in the, today's version of the yellow pages, when you need someone, why don't we give you a shortcut here and just tell you, here's who you can trust.
Well, and we have, we're in the AI world,
I think that's today's yellow page.
That is today's yellow pages. And, it's like, how do you get found on AI now is the big thing. Because it's changing. It's changing everything. My training program is, going to be all in AI. And so connecting people and giving them the message that you're giving with resilience, preparing ahead of time, includes having that contractor, includes having that first response. What do and so the days of, the HOA president and flip-flops and you got to be a money manager. You got to be you got to know something about your building. You got to be on top of what's happening, because you don't want to be in that middle and after a storm finding out what you don't know.
Being subservient to the first contractor that knocks on your door after a hurricane just hits is the absolute last position you want to be in. Well,
it can be what we call the disaster after the disaster, where you have something that is once in a lifetime, and now you have a contractor or somebody on board that now is making it worse. And that can happen. And hopefully it doesn't happen as much as it is, but it can.
That's a dense topic, because look, if a contractor exists to stockpile equipment in the Midwest to serve our needs after we get hit with a major hurricane, there's utility in that. That's not necessarily a bad thing. That's people, and insurance companies have a hard time understanding why the bill is significantly higher after a Cat 3 hurricane as opposed to toilet backed up. Well, it's because we had to keep staff and equipment, carry all the depreciation, and so there is legitimacy to the fact that the cost is going to go up after a storm.
Yeah.
But as well as I do, the good companies, that number is going to be about right when you consider all those things, and the bad companies are going to double and triple it, which then gets them in a fight with their insurance company at best. At worst, it was all gamified before they even showed up, and they've got their own counsel on board ready for that fight.
And they'll fight it out, and they'll get paid eventually, but then it sets up it makes it worse for the good contractor that was
Well, it makes it horrible for the policy,
and makes it for everyone.
Yeah.
But there is a cost, and we were talking, what happens to the next storm, because think about power. And this is not only
this was a good point
for the restore and for everybody in general, whether you own a property or whatever, and you need power, all the data centers, that are out there. And that's a big topic now. Everybody, you either hate them or love them.
You want to debate that for the next one?
that's a whole nother podcast. But that's where the power is. And so, my friends at United Rentals, they've got all of their equipment out, on data centers, Sunbelt, all of the, so there's not a lot of spare generators running around the United States right now. And so luckily we don't have an event happening right now because it would be exposed in getting power to generate, the drying services and cooling services, everything that is needed, or just general power, to buildings, that could be an issue.
Yeah, and I'm really glad that you called that out to me because it's not something I've been paying attention to, but you're absolutely right. And it affects how these from the wearing an insurance company's hat right now, it really affects how we reserve for a storm too.
Yeah.
It's one thing in an association landscape where, okay, power is going to be out for an additional 3 weeks because we can't get temporary power in here, which in a lot of the association world means you're going to stay at your regular house in Michigan for 3 weeks longer. But when you get into hospitality, industrial, manufacturing, hospitals, the amount of business income loss that comes along with that continued lack of power is astronomical.
Well, and then
billions.
And also along the lines of the cooling, because if you own stock in like Train or Carrier right now, you're doing very well because they can't build cooling because the data centers need power and cooling. And so they can't build chillers and cooling equipment fast enough.
Yeah.
And so all that temporary equipment is being taken up. So in the middle of an event, you have a big building that loses its unit is sitting out in the Atlantic Ocean. Getting it replaced might be a while.
Yeah, and we saw some of this during the Louisiana storms in 2020, all the way up through Ian in 2022. There was such supply chain disruption due to COVID. Not to the extreme of what you just outlined with, potential temporary power shortage, fire pumps, elevator components, just couldn't get them. What should have been a 12-week rehabilitation process turned into 2.5 years in cases, which ties back into my message of resilience. When I'm sitting there talking to that property owner, and look, if you don't put yourself in a position to protect your downside during a storm and have those partners and the supply chains in place after a storm, what's a good owner in a condo in Florida if you can't visit the thing for 3 damn years afterward?
Well, and if you're owner, you're in South America, it might not matter, but and that's your condo down in Miami, but for the
West Coast Florida is different though, where you've got a lot of money over there,
Yeah.
but it's a second home to most of these folks.
Yeah.
They live in Chicago, they live in Atlanta, they live somewhere else. But it takes a lot of preparation, Tom. It really does. And condo owners, especially if it's a second home to them, or even a single family home, second home to them, they want all the upside of having that place in Florida.
Yeah.
But they don't even want to give it the same diligence that they would their own home in Michigan, right?
It does become out of sight, out of mind. The HOA, the president's got it, that type of thing, and it's reactionary. So all of a sudden, we live in a reactionary country where we react, after something happens.
Back to our Champlain Towers, we overswing. That's what risk management does.
Yeah.
There's a better way to do it though. And it's just getting enough consensus, and then ultimately it has to be, the politicians have to be involved to some degree. I wish there was more collaboration between, some of our efforts out here and the rules and regulation statutes that actually come out of Tallahassee today, because there's still a mismatch.
Yeah, that's a whole nother topic.
I did see we lost our head of our statewide emergency management this last week as well. That's Still have to call a couple people and figure out what's going to happen if a hurricane does hit 3 weeks. Do we have anybody steering up there?
Yeah.
Did
Yeah. Because,
you see that?
yeah.
Kevin Guthrie
Yeah.
joined on Jay Collins.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then he didn't win the primary the next day.
Yeah.
And DeSantis fired Kevin Guthrie. So we're kind of waiting to see.
Well, and maybe we're just not going to have anything. Maybe that's our. Maybe we're just not going to have a
I think I'm going to go ahead and prepare. I do want to point something out there, though, in that there's a lot of truth to what you just said. And the fact with the El Nino, and it's a severe El Nino, the chances of us having a storm are significantly down this year.
Yeah.
The dust is clearing out as we speak,
Yeah.
but the wind shear is severe to where we're probably going to be going into mid-September without anything even coming off of the Atlantic Ocean. If we do get something this year, the chances are is it's going to be another Caribbean creeper coming up into the Gulf Coast.
Yeah.
But where El Nino is suppressing hurricane activity, it's going to lead to serious increase in strong convective storms in Florida and the Southeast in general. So
with rain
this year, anticipate that there's going to be a serious spike in tornadoes and hail in those winter, early spring months where we typically wouldn't see them. There's also going to be a significant increase in inland flooding.
Yeah.
When we think flood, everybody automatically goes to storm surge and tidal rise on the coast, but 30 to 40% of flood damage is just inland. It rained 8 inches and we don't have good drainage, and here we go.
Well, and think about all the growth that's happened. You know, there's places in Orlando, places in Tampa, there's places, you know, that didn't have anything built on them before. Now that's where, you know, it used to be a pasture and the water all used to drain off into there. Now that pasture is gone, so the water isn't draining any. And if the proper drainage isn't happening, all of a sudden you're having flooding in areas that never had flooding before.
And that's on the larger infrastructure level. Back to our day-to-day risk consulting. Every community, are you getting your storm drains inspected and jetted on a yearly basis, especially if you have new construction going on around you, because all that debris is getting in New Orleans. It's actually kind of funny. New Orleans is the only city that has a good excuse, and that it's just all filled up with beads. What do you want us to do about it? And they actually do use that excuse, and there actually probably is some truth to it. But in general, Florida does have good infrastructure, and a community or even your community here, you probably have 20 storm drain grates. We drive around this thing. It costs $3,000 or $4,000 to go inspect and jet all those things once a year because we need that water to flow after the storm happens.
Yeah, there's an assessment right now for the drainage here. It's a unique little community because they cut off the road. The road used to go into the other neighborhood here, but they decided to cut it off, and so they became responsible for everything in here. And drainage is a big deal, especially when, you know, we get rain here and it comes down.
Well, to put a real world situation to that, downtown Sarasota flooded. It's been about 2.5 years ago now. Wasn't hurricane related. Actually, it was June of 2024. Afternoon thunderstorm dropped 10-12 inches worth of rain.
Yeah.
And the city storm drains were garbage. So it backed up into all the buildings. We had garages with 3 foot of water in them. Led to a few lithium-ion battery situations, which is probably a different podcast in itself. But that's important. And it starts getting real expensive when you try to isolate yourself from the city's infrastructure.
Yeah, especially when a large event happens, because then that's when your weakness is exposed.
Absolutely.
And all of a sudden you thought you had it covered because you have the roof, but we forgot about the drainage, forgot about rising water, forgot that they're built all around you. There's no more runoff. There's a lot going on that people just really need to think about.
Yeah, and I want to double down on that subject because flooding is our biggest threat. If we look out over time, I mean, whether monetary, whether actually changing lives, flooding is really what we need to be concerned about. Look, I know where I live. I stay pretty neutral when it comes to the politicization of, climate change and all these discussions. Even if we take sea level rise linearly, water's going to come up. It's getting hotter. Okay, it's just what we're observing. And with that, the storm surges are going to be worse. Tidal issues are going to be worse. We're already seeing that in Miami, and that's. I don't need a paper. I can see it. That garage didn't used to flood, and now I have 1.5 feet of water in it 2 months out of the year.
Miami is the textbook case of that. I mean, you can just go and it's right
it
there.
really is. It's second to New Orleans as far as vulnerability when it comes to sea level rise. But the point that I want to make is anybody living in one of these coastal markets needs to educate themselves on how to protect themselves against flood.
Yep.
And you touched on something a second ago that made me think about it as far as, actual water rise.
Yep.
So if you're that homeowner out here, you've either been flooded or you have concerns about being flooded, you need to consider all the elements. It's not as simple as strapping those panels on your front door to keep the water out. For most single family homes, if you go past a couple foot of protection trying to actually keep the water out of the inside of your house, what you're going to do is make your house float away.
Yeah.
Because the sea or the water table is going to come up at the same pace. So you've got to think about not just this water, but this water.
On the coast, the water table
isn't very deep.
No. I mean, you have to, put in a swimming pool. You got to get a survey because the water table out here is 7 feet.
Yeah. And if you guys take anything away from this conversation, it's you've got to do some research. You need an expert involved if you're going to spend any type of significant money to protect your home against flooding.
Well, very good. I think we killed it. That's actually an hour.
Yeah.
How do we do
sure
that?
You can get an hour out of it. I appreciate you having me, Tom. It was a pleasure.
No, it's my pleasure. And great conversation. Look up Jeremiah on LinkedIn, on the socials. Look for the resilience for business owners and property owners out there. Look for the Resilience Tour. I'll have a little banner on here. There'll be a banner below here that'll have everything on it. And look him up. The message is great. And we live in a time where we have to be prepared because costs are going up. There's never been it's never been more important to be completely prepared for these events.
Proactive.
Yes, because it's just reactive anymore in Florida. It's really, we can't do it because number one, it costs more to live here. Our insurance, everything costs more. So we have to take care of these things ourselves. And
it all starts with education.
Yeah.
You don't know what you don't know.
And like a mentor of mine used to say, Tom, we don't need another education. And so we've already been educated. We don't need another education. And so thank you, Jeremiah.
Appreciate you having me.
It's a pleasure, bud. Thank you.
Likewise.
Thanks for listening to Conversations on the Edge with Tom and TJ. Don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. And if you like what you hear, leave us a review. Join us next time for another Conversation on the Edge.